This is Unit 9 of a 10-part series, Insurance, Budgeting, Estate Planning, all part of my personal finance and money management courses. My hope is that by the end of this unit, students will understand how financial planning tools such as insurance, budgeting, and estate planning can protect their income, assets, and future goals. In this unit, students have guided notes that they can use to follow along to make sure that they understand everything that is entailed within the unit of insurance, budgeting, trusts, and wills. We first define what insurance is as a contract between a person and an insurance company that provides financial protection if you are injured, become ill, lose income, or if something valuable that you've insured is lost or damaged. We start with an introductory video that just gives students a few key vocabulary terms that they need to know that is relevant to most insurance situations. And those terms are also followed up by me, where I share with students what they mean. Some common insurance terminology is a premium, and that is effectively the amount that the insuree, the person that is being insured, or the type of thing that's being insured, that person needs to pay every single time that their pay frequency comes up, if it's monthly, 6 months, yearly, or however else it is situated. The deductible is the amount of money that the person needs to pay out of pocket before the insurance begins to actually kick in and start paying for whatever it is that was insured. And the out of pocket maximum is the total amount that a person that is insured will need to pay for an entire calendar year in the event that they need to utilize that insurance. Some of the very common types of insurance are pet insurance, rental insurance, automobile insurance. If I happen to have a pet, which I do, that is prone to certain types of illnesses, my dog specifically is prone to hip dysplasia. If that were to happen and needed surgery, that would be very expensive. As such, I pay approximately $41 per month in pet insurance to make sure that if he needs to ever have that surgery, I would not have to pay out of pocket for the full cost of what that would entail. It is me effectively, I wouldn't call it gambling, but rather hedging against the possibility of the world of what ifs. What if something happens? Additionally, if you were somebody that was renting a home, if your house gets broken into or it's involved in a flood, your belongings are not going to be covered under the property owner's insurance. So you need to carry rental insurance if you choose to do so. Automobile insurance is something that we will talk a little bit more in detail about soon. And if you follow my payroll deduction packet unit 1, then you also learn about life insurance. When we talk about car insurance, these are three common vocabulary words you should familiarize yourself with. Liability coverage, which is a requirement in the state in which I live, which is California. It may be different depending on where you live, but this covers the cost of damage or injury that you cause to somebody else. And the general reason why this is a requirement where I live is because the state wants to make sure that if you damage somebody else's property, that that other person isn't just out of luck because you made a mistake. That liability coverage covers the other person, but comprehensive coverage is what covers you and your asset, and in this case, the car. So if you have liability and comprehensive coverage, if you are in an accident, the other person's car is covered as well as your car being covered. And you will have some type of a deductible as such. So for me, for example, I have a 500 coverage on my vehicles. And so what that means is if I damage someone else's car, I have to pay $500, and then the car insurance will pay the remainder. If I damage my own vehicle, then I have to pay $500, and then they will cover the damage to my car. If you go to get a car loan because you couldn't afford to, or you just chose not to pay for the car outright in cash, then the lender, the bank, will oftentimes, not oftentimes, to the best of my knowledge, every time require you to have a lending minimum deductible. And it is my understanding 500 is the norm within the industry standard. And the reason that they do that is because they want to make sure that if you are in an accident, that the asset that they effectively own, because you don't own it outright yet, is covered under insurance. And so that is why they want to make sure that you are covered. In class, I have my students get an automobile insurance quote. The link is right there to the general website. And I use the general because it is one where you don't need to put in any personal information. They will give you an estimate right there over the internet for free. I do have my students put in a bogus email because I don't really feel bad since we're sending it just to a computer. We're not sending it to any humans that have to spend time crunching numbers on this. I make an entire video tutorial of how to navigate that site here, which you can click as well. And then you can also use a real address, but I would highly recommend that you do not. I would also ensure that you are putting in your birth date to show is at least 22 years old. So you may need to manipulate those numbers and then also enter the date first licensed to reflect your age. Also noting for completion, SR22 is a no. You financed, meaning that you got a loan, and don't enter anything for international so that we get the most accurate results. It is worth noting that the general does come in a little bit higher than most insurance companies that I personally have worked with. So clicking on the general insurance link, it's time to get a free car insurance quote. I use the general because it is free to access and I don't waste anybody's time because I'm only communicating with the computer. Here I'm going to put in some fake information because it doesn't necessarily need real information. And for date of birth, I'm going to use January 1st, and let's use 2003 for this example. Gender, marital status. I'm not entering a phone number. I leave SR22 as a no. Date first licensed. I'm going to say that, let's see, if I was born in 2003, that would mean that in 2019 is when I was 16 years old. I'm going to leave international country blank. The license has not been suspended or revoked. I would recommend everybody completes an accident prevention course as it will save you money on your insurance. No accidents. If you are a student filling this out, I would recommend if you actually have accidents that you would include that there. And then DUI, hopefully a no. I'm leaving no other drivers, and I'm not going to exclude anybody from coverage. Next screen up here is going to ask me what kind of vehicle it is. I'll just make something up here. Let's say a 2014 Toyota Tacoma, and double cab. And then is the vehicle owned, financed, or leased? Financed just means that you have a loan on it. I'll click that. Is the vehicle used in any course of business? No. And is it a salvage title, gray title, anything else like that? I'll say no. Click continue. It'll calculate the savings and price. And this is what I'm looking for. And so the big key pieces that you want to see here is how much is the down payment. So that's how much it just takes to start it. And then what are the future monthly payments of $348.70 every single month. The total for an entire year is going to be $3,986.76. It is worth noting that the general is on the high side of insurance quotes, but it gives you at least a ballpark. So that's a starting point. With health insurance, things get a little bit different here, but the norms are still there. All the terminology we just used for those other pieces still exist. I show you this video and it's clickable to where you can learn a little bit more about health insurance. And then I have students review a sample health insurance form. They use that information to figure out, well, what is it that they may be interested in when they go to get health insurance of their own? They have to come up with some answers to what these different areas are and how they would fill it out if they were somebody that was filling out a new hire packet of information at a new employer. And so it gives them some definitions as to what is happening in the personal information section, the different plan choices, plan types, as well as those terms. Next up is this sample health insurance form. When I click on this right here, students will have a chance to learn more about how to fill this out. If you are a new employee, you'll usually receive one of these new hire packets where you would check new employee, enter in all of your information. If you're a full-time, part-time, or somewhere in between, then from here, the plan selection, there's going to be other pages that will break down what these are, but usually speaking, the more coverage that you have, the more expensive the plan. And from here, if you had dependents, you would list them in that location there. The plan section, this spot right here is just stating more information about your employment and then seeing if you wanted to request life insurance. Down in this section, they're asking for your health status to determine your eligibility, other medical questions, any explanations for any type of health insurance. You would sign it and date it and then send it off. Now that we are moving away from insurance, we need to start talking about budgeting. And budgeting is effectively an estimate of income and expenses over a period of time. And it's a strategy used to ensure you spend less than you earn. With budgeting, we want to make sure that we know, well, what are all of our expenses? How much income are we making? We want to set aside some kind of goals. And in most cases, with a budget, your hope is to save some money. And so we have to devise a plan to make sure that this all works. First thing we need to do is identify all of our expenses. So let's define those. A fixed expense is something that doesn't change. It's the same number every single month. For example, my cell phone bill is the same every month. My mortgage payment is the same every month. If I had an automobile loan, it would be the same every month. If I had a student loan, it would be the same every month. This is a fixed expense. It does not change. A variable expense is something that changes every single time. For example, when I put gas in my car, it's a little bit more expensive or less expensive every time. I use a bit more gas. I use a little bit less gas. The price might change. The gas to heat my home, the water that I use within my household, the electricity that I use within my household. These are all things that adjust every single month depending on what I use and how much I use. In the colder months, I use more gas in my house. In the warmer months, I will use more electricity. That's just the way that it works. It's variable. And unexpected expenses. These are things that come up. It's when life happens. This is using your automobile insurance to pay for that deductible that you have. One of the common expenses that students are not familiar with, that they just don't consider, is the idea of planning out a grocery list for one full week. And so students in my class estimate and record one full week of the food that they will eat and then come up with the prices using an online store. I like to use Safeway.com. That is a West Coast grocery store to the best of my knowledge. And if you're somewhere else watching this, certainly you could use a different website, but that one is pretty user friendly. And I provide students with a template to log their food. It is a Google Sheet and a completed example so they know what is expected of them. In addition to this, I also have an assignment, but I don't have a slide that's attached here. And that assignment is where they jigsaw it out within the class, where students come up with all of the different bills that are utilities that are common. For example, how much is the average trash bill, sewer bill, electric bill, gas bill? How much is Comcast or internet? How much is a cell phone bill, and more? I have my students create a grocery list with at least roughly 15 to 20 items. You can manipulate this screen to adjust the tax rate based on where it is that you live. I have them add in the item. I don't always make them put the brand of what it is. They put in the number of units. So for example, if I'm buying 2 cartons of a case of a dozen eggs, then I would put in 2 units at whatever the price is per unit. And now that we have that information, we can start doing some planning. I give students access to a budget spreadsheet. If you are one of my students, all of the assignments that you've done throughout this semester, on the left column where it says unit number will tell you where to find the information to plug in. If you're somebody that is not one of my students, then you can either skip that or consider looking at the opportunity to purchase some of those units so that you can also get your students to do it too. Enter in the food and groceries from that last activity, the rent and mortgage for wherever it is that you choose to live. So rent or mortgage, I should say, if you own your home or if you're renting. How much are your utilities, as we discovered in a jigsawing class earlier? Add up all of your subscriptions, entertainment, Netflix, Spotify, gym, gaming, those kind of things. How much is your car expenses, as we found in our Unit 5, automobiles and lending? Our car insurance quote that we just did, our car loan payment, how much are we spending on personal types of purchases? And then in my investments unit, students estimated the number of years that they would be around for retirement. And then also in Unit 1, they had determined how much their 3% contribution to a 401k per month would be, in addition to a 3% employer match. We multiply that out to determine how much our 401k match would be per month. So that we can then estimate how much we would have for a 401k and distributions. We also estimated in that same unit how much our Social Security would be per month. And then in Unit 1, we determined our gross monthly income, which would go up here in total income. Net monthly income would go up here in our total monthly income. And then down in this section where it says saving for a home, how much is the first home that you would want to purchase. It'll tell you what the down payment necessary to do that would be at a 20% amount, and then how many months it would take you to save 20% based on whether you had extra money or were short on money in your savings ability. That savings ability is the amount of money that they can set aside each pay period after covering all of their expenses so that they can help determine how to reach their financial goals. What are those goals? Well, They vary from everybody, but I like to make it definable. Something such as, what are your goals within a year? Is it to save up to have enough money for a emergency fund? Maybe in 1 to 5 years, you want to set aside money to pay off your car. Maybe you want to even start saving money for a down payment on a house. In the long term, you want to maybe consider investing in the stock market and making sure that you have more money set aside in the emergency fund, as well as retirement accounts, as well as money in a brokerage account, or extra money for a vacation of some kind. And now that you have that budget in place, you are in control of your money, not the other way around. You can use that budget to determine how long it will take for your goals to become a reality. And now that we have all this money that we've set aside in our budget, it is now time for us to protect that money and all of the assets. And we do that with estate planning. So estate planning is deciding how your assets will be managed and distributed should something happen to you if you are unable to make decisions or you pass away. The purpose is to protect your family and assets and make sure that whatever you want to see happen with your assets is followed through. It reduces stress, taxes, and confusion for your loved ones and gives you a little bit of peace of mind as well. The key idea here is that everybody has an estate. It's everything that a person owns. And so the first piece that we talk about in protecting your assets is a will. So a will, what it does is it is a legal document that states who receives the property that you own, if it's like a car or, for example, a home. Who is going to care for any dependents after you pass away? So if you have children, who's going to take care of them? The key points here is that it becomes effective only after death. It must be signed and witnessed, and then it names an executor, meaning the person that's going to carry out those wishes. For example, I leave my car to my nephew, Jordan. It is worth noting that if you have a will, although that is a solid estate tool, you should know that even with that will, it will need to go to court into what's called probate, where a judge will have to determine the validity of that will and make sure that everything is distributed as you had intended. But there's a way that we can also avoid probate court and save your beneficiary, meaning the person that will receive these assets, some legal fees as well as trouble and time. And we do that with what's called a trust. The trust is a legal arrangement where a trustee manages assets for the benefit of somebody else. The person that will receive it is the beneficiary. So if I was to have something happen to me, the beneficiary of my home in this case is going to be, if something happened to my wife and I, it would actually be my mother-in-law. And then we have successors to that and more people as well. The benefit to this, it avoids the probate court, which is quite expensive. Additionally, it can reduce some estate taxes. It allows those assets to be managed while I'm still alive. And there are other different types to be noted as well. Some of them you can change, others you can't, such as there's a revocable trust where I can make adjustments, irrevocable meaning that I cannot, and there's a few other forms as well. Why does this matter? The reason that a trust matters is because you can name the people that will receive these assets, such as a home, and it avoids confusion and legal fees later. It helps you understand how the information will work, and it makes it to where you can protect all of your future assets. Estate planning is a key step in financial independence and responsibility to make sure that the lives of those that you love will be easy and stress-free in what otherwise might be a time of chaos in the reason why that trust needs to be executed. At the end of all of this, I have my students create a mock trust assignment. Although it is brief, this is something that gives the students an opportunity to take their time to think, well, if I had these assets, what would I do with it? Who would be the recipient of it? Who would be my beneficiaries? And I also note in here that the students are both the grantor as well as the trustee. The grantor is the creator of the trust, and the trustee is the manager of the assets until there is a successor trustee, being the person that would then be responsible upon incapacitation or death. I have them complete all of the sections in the document, the beneficiaries, the property, the purpose, and as well as a reflection. With all of that information, the final step is to make this mock trust assignment to make sure that all of your assets are protected to be distributed amongst the people that you care for and love and want them distributed to. I tell you that you have a home valued at $500,000, a car worth $20,000, jewelry or other valuables at $15,000. The student then puts in their name for the family trust. They would enter that they are the person creating the trust as the grantor. The date created would be today. The trustee is the person responsible for managing the assets, which is likely going to be them. The successor trustee would be the person that, if something happened to you, if you passed away or were incapacitated, who would then oversee the trust and all of those assets. You would detail out whatever the property is and assets listed, and then who receives what, the beneficiaries. So the beneficiary is the person that receives the asset upon your passing, and what the relationship is to you and what they receive, whether it's a percentage or just the full asset, what the purpose of the trust is, whether it's to protect assets, avoid probate fees and court law fees and whatnot, provide for children, give to charity, and whether it is a revocable trust, or irrevocable trust, or special purpose trust. The big difference is one you can change, one you cannot change, and another one is for specific reasons. And why did you choose that type? And then finally, they reflect as to how they create that trust and what protecting those assets or making things easier for their family means to them in the future. All of this to be said that my students, when they walk out of this class, will be able to identify how insurance, budgeting, and basic estate planning work together to manage risk, build financial security, and ensure financial stability throughout different life stages.